Welcome back to Scene Rundown. Let us watch Shogun Episode 5, Broken to the Fist. The fifth episode of Shogun begins with Buntaro and a massive army led by Toranaga arriving in Ajiro. We are surprised that Mariko's husband Buntaro returns from the dead. Toranaga claims that Buntaro survived Kiyama and Ishido's attack because he had assistance from a group of ronin. Toranaga receives Mariko's meticulous notes on John's work and informs her that she will not be moving out of John's. But Buntaro will instead take up residence in John's home. Mariko will be able to help John and her husband in this way. His thoughts are primarily focused on Nagakado's choice to murder Jozen. In an attempt to impress his father, Nagakado kills a pheasant bird, but Toranaga hands it to Mariko and instructs her to give it to John as a thank you gift. Next, Toranaga goes on to correct Nagakado for his ignorance. Even though he wasn't there, he urges his son to exercise caution when it comes to encouraging violence, because he is aware that Nagakado's actions are a result of Yabushige and Omi. After receiving the pheasant as a present from Toranaga, John chooses to hang it outside to decay and prepare it for a supper he enjoys. He claims that no one should touch it, and that if they do, they must perish. Fuji begins setting up distinct areas for the preparation of traditional Japanese cuisine and meals for John. However, Buntaro's presence cuts that short. After saying some critical things about John and Fuji, Buntaro announces that he will return for dinner. In order to proceed with Toranaga's impeachment, the Regents' Council convenes to determine Toranaga's successor. However, their inability to agree on whether the council should be more country or more Christian appears to be tearing them apart. Even worse, Ishido ends up with Jozen's head, which forces him to intensify his preparations to eliminate Toranaga and his clan. Yabushige is confronted by Toranaga about Jozen's fate. Saying he was the one who persuaded Nagakado, Yabushige attempts to put Omi under the bus because he believes it will keep him in Toranaga's good graces. By designating Omi as the commander of the Anjin's artillery regiment, Toranaga deceives Yabushige. Yabushige is definitely enraged by this. Omi declares that he is prepared to resign from his role as the head of Anjin's artillery division. Although Omi is that army's formal commander, according to Yabushige, Yabushige is really in command of everything. Then, in order to let Ishido know that Yabushige is still on his side, he sends Igarashi to Osaka. Muraji, the spy for Toranaga, and Uejirou may be heard complaining about the rotting pheasant. Mariko and Fuji gripe about being obligated to guys who have been cursed. John enters the frame at that point to ask what has to be done to get ready for Buntaro. Mariko merely instructs him to get ready for dinner, but he expects she will tell him something about how their connection would affect her marriage to her husband. John and Buntaro are waiting for one another when they have an apparently unrelated talk about Uejirou's rock garden. When Buntaro appears, it's clear that he finds John's existence to be annoying. Although they talk about swords and firearms, the actual conflict between them is a battle of words and cultural differences. The Japanese refuse to eat John's rabbit stew because they don't think it tastes good. Buntaro chastises John for making a lot of noise while eating the noodles. John then continues to eat louder in an attempt to annoy Buntaro. When John notices Buntaro drinking sake from a traditional sake cup, he gives him a teasing look by drinking sake from his soup bowl. The two men then get into a drinking contest as a result. Mariko and Fuji attempt to stop the foolishness, but John inflames the situation by making Buntaro clarify how he managed to get away from Ishido and Kiyama's men. Buntaro disrespects Mariko by shooting the arrows so that they fly just inches from her face, demonstrating his proficiency with a bow and arrow. John is visibly appalled by this act of phony machismo and asks Mariko to inform Buntaro. He shouldn't make fun of Mariko in such a deplorable manner. In an attempt to defend his lack of regard for Mariko, Buntaro commands Mariko to recount the tale of her father, Lord Akechi Jinsai, and how treacherous he was. But Mariko informs John of the truth of Kuroda-sama, the Taikō ruler of Japan, and how Akechi was compelled to assassinate Kuroda due to his corruption and ruthlessness. Then there was a murder in Mariko's family. When Buntaro mistreats Mariko later that evening, John becomes enraged and chases after him, threatening to shoot him. With that, Buntaro lays down his sword and claims that the drink caused him to behave inappropriately. It's obvious that John doesn't want to murder an unarmed individual. He thus permits him to go. Meeting Muraji, the most valuable samurai in Toranaga's men, he informs him that Yabushige is looking for a spy. According to Toranaga, Muraji only has to toss a dummy in Yabushige's direction to trick him into thinking the spy he's been looking for has been apprehended. John rushes to Mariko, who is sitting alone in a remote part of the forest, rather than fulfilling Fuji's request to dispose of the rotting pheasant. John is informed by Mariko that they shouldn't be seen together any longer. If Mariko wishes to get rid of Buntaro, John tells her to do it. He is told a story by Mariko about the swords he is carrying. She claims that in order to maintain Fuji's feeling of honor for her father, her grandfather purchased the swords from an inebriated samurai, not because her father died a hero. Mariko makes a connection between this story of ignorance and the reality that she is refusing to give Buntaro what he truly desires, her hatred. John makes the point that Mariko is being hurt in the end, and shouldn't be making herself go through this in order to exact revenge on Buntaro. Mariko tells John to stay away from her and will not stop doing what she is doing, even if it means being a little more overt in her disdain of Buntaro. When John gets home, he discovers that Uejirou has died for having touched the pheasant. John said that it was illegal to eat pheasant. It seems that Uejirou put his life in danger since the smell of the dead bird was unbearable, which was sufficient justification for his death. It was Fuji who gave the order. She begs John to also kill her for this reason. All of this disgusts John, who tells Fuji and her crew to leave him before he makes a snap decision. Afterwards, Muraji's painting of Uejirou as the spy appears to have persuaded Yabushige that Toranaga's spy has died. John learns a valuable lesson about caution from Uejirou's death, regardless of the cause. He has been demeaning the Japanese thus far for taking everything so literally. But as he watches a violent earthquake take so many lives at the end of Shogun Episode 5, he comes to the realization that life is incredibly short and shouldn't be wasted carelessly. He needs to make sure that his words and deeds have some substance. The story about Uejirou's death fits in nicely with the themes of Mariko holding in her resentment of her husband, and Fuji's grandfather lying to her about her father's sword in order to preserve her sense of self-respect. John had intended to go from Japan with his troops, but he chooses to stay when the earthquake strengthens his relationship with Toranaga. In order to give Toranaga a sense of respect, something that was lacking due to Fuji's grandfather's deception, he even lends him his swords, which Toranaga loses in the landslide. Speaking of Fuji, despite her injuries, she makes it through the earthquake. When she sees that John is no longer upset with him, she appears content. How much John is developing as a character is demonstrated by a brief shot of him rearranging Uejirou's rock garden. Subsequently, there is a really scary scene in which Lady Ochiba sees her son and starts talking to Ishido. She expresses gratitude to Ishido for helping her escape Edo, but she also highlights how Toranaga subverted the council by denying it the ability to vote on any matter. Ishido makes an effort to persuade himself that he is making some headway in his efforts to remove Toranaga from the Council of Regents. He is informed by Lady Ochiba that the council had an opportunity, but they wasted it. She will now make all of the decisions, and the council will report to her. Until next episode. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more videos.